Research design and classifications of data. Research designs. First is repeated measures, which are when a person will be tested on either the same test a few weeks down the line with all the same conditions, or a comparison tested. An example could be doing the standing broad jump on 1 week and then again in 3 weeks' time and comparing the results, or taking the standing broad jump and standing vertical jump and comparing them together and seeing the relation between the test and the results of the expulsivity. In independent groups, this is when there will be various different people testing for the same test. For example, when we all did the multi-stage fitness test, this was an example of independent groups because as a group we are all different and from each other and we all do different sports and we're all being tested on the same test, so obviously we'll all get different results. Right, so matched pairs. This is similar to the independent groups in the way that they all do the same test. However, it is different because of the people. The people will be from the same sport, so have common things in common. For example, 2 basketball teams could be tested for their vertical jumps and compared. We would try our best to match the people equally, so if you had a person that could jump about 3 metres, then you would obviously try and compare him to someone who could actually jump that high, or it wouldn't be fair. Right, experimental research designs. The first one is experimental. This is a very systematic approach as you try to control the other variables other than the one you will manipulate. The next one is cross-sectional. The cross-sectional is when you would get a sample from a particular population of people. For example, if you were to study rugby players, you would have to get samples from different age groups, different rugby games like union and league. You would also have to get a sample of how elite players are and act. The next one is case study. This type of research is where you study maybe a group of athletes or maybe a player that you tend to get real in-depth information from, and you'd be able to, and you would be looking to show the development of and change development over a period of time. This can be a longer form of study and longitudinal studies, case studies as well. It sort of links with that. However, this would be more specific to an individual or group, as you can see how long it takes them to progress or get worse. Longitudinal, that this type of research implies in the name, as it's a very long form of research. It normally spans over many years, as in a very elongated process, and you'll be looking for a change over development of time. Comparative. This is when you would be comparing things, so if you're comparing how PE is taught at A level and GCSE, for example. Research sources. There are 2 types, which are primary and secondary. Primary is data that you've collected yourself using tests and things such as, if you wanted to go to the lab and get the VO2 max test and you're doing it yourself, that would be primary data. An advantage of this is that you know it's legitimate work because it's tailor-made to suit you and what you're looking for, and it's not done by anyone else, so you know the variables and all sorts of stuff. The disadvantage is that it does not cost you. It does cost money. It does. Everything does. Running tests. Right. Secondary data. This is data that you can use to back up your hypothesis and your own results, but it's not your data, so you don't collect the results. For example, if you're testing for thigh girth, you could use your results and search for someone else's results on the internet or in books. An advantage of this is that it could back up your results and help prove hypotheses. For example, if your hypothesis was that male footballers have bigger thigh girths than females, your results could say they do, and your second data suggests this as well by backing up your results. A disadvantage to the data is may not be legitimate, as you're getting it from sources such as the web, and sources such as Wikipedia, they ain't trusted because anyone can go on there and change it. Classifications of data. Discrete data. This is very simplistic and is non-numerical. They can be yes and no answers. An example of one of the type of questions asked to gain the data would be, are you 20 years of age? Yes or no? Right, the next classification of data is nominal data. This type of data can be less informative because it may not explain an answer. It could also be a table type of data collection, like a frequency or tally like a table, and the data out there would be nominal. The next classification of data is ordinal data. This gives data in rank order, so the sizes of people's shoes could be used because they could be ranked from biggest to smallest. Right, the next classification of data is continuous data. Continuous data has a numerical value and can have any number of decimal places. There are two subcategories of continuous data. These are interval data and ratio data. Interval data is where is a scale of equal measurement or intervals. So data is obtained from the thermometers would be interval data, but is not set at absolute zero. Ratio data is where the scale starts at zero and has a set equal measurements to obtain data. An example of data obtained from ratio data is data from scales because they start at zero and are measured in equal amounts. Right, so here are some examples of all the different types of data. Right, so in this column here is the sprint. This column is ordinal data, and the data is represented in descending order. The shortest time is at the top, and the slowest time is at the bottom. Discrete data is the type of data is categorised into two separate options. So, standing broad jump, which is this column here. This column is continuous data, which is continuous ratio data, as the data is numerical. There are equal intervals between data, and there is an absolute zero. Continuous data is data that's represented as a numerical value. So this column here, which would be the height, that is continuous data. Right, so the height column, which is this column here, is continuous ratio data. As the data was numerical, there are equal intervals between the data, and there's an absolute zero. So smoker and non-smoker. This column is discrete data, as the data is separated into two different categories, which is yes or no. The sit and reach column, which is this one here, this is nominal data, as the data is categorised by name. So you either got excellent, above average, average, yeah, so it's just that. Ordinal data, which is the data in the standing broad jump, which is the actual numbers, is data that can be ranked in an order, so it's highest to lowest in that case. Weight change column. This column is continuous interval data, as the data is numerical and the data goes below zero, so it goes minus to minus numbers, which means it's interval data. Right, so the sex column. This column is discrete data, as the data is separated into two different categories, so you're either male or you're female. Nominal data. This type of data is put into categories, so it's by name, so it's in order of name, so it's in the alphabetical order. Yeah. Right, so you've got the age column. This column is continuous ratio data, as the data is numerical and therefore are equal intervals between each data, and there's an absolute zero in the, because you could be 0 years of age. Right, so quantitative data. You got observational and notational. There are two parts of observation, and if you want to, yeah. So there's participant observation. This is where the researcher is actively participating in the activities of the group. For example, if you were researching how teams bond, you could participate either covertly or overtly to gain the information you need. Advantages are that this can be done in natural settings rather than research settings, and you can also get the feeling what it's like to be really part of the group, especially if you were covertly observing. Disadvantages are that if the participants participating, you would have to remember what happened in the day or during the session until you got home to write it up, so you may forget things that you should remember. Second thing of observation is non-participant observation. This is where the researcher is observing a group but not participating. For example, you could observe a group cohesion this way. Advantages could be that it's easier to make notes and record data because you're not participating. Another could be observations like these are easy to set up and are cheap. Disadvantages could be people might act up because they know you're being watched, and you will not get their real behaviours of the person. This is called the Hawthorne effect, and it invalidates your research. You may interpret their actions when bonding differently than what they actually do in a proper training session or in a game or anything. Another form of quantitative data is notational analysis. This is when you study the movements, strategies and tactics from a team or an individual player. done by creating a table with specific skills in and then filling in while watching them play. The advantages of this: you see people's strengths and weaknesses, you see if they're improving, and you see where they need to improve. Disadvantages are: it's hard to see everything in the game, it's time consuming because you have to be there to watch it. It can be demoralising for that player as they know they're being marked effectively by you. Qualitative data. Structures. The definition is having a well-defined structure or organisation, or being highly organised. The advantages are that it's easy to set up and to control. You can get very simplistic answers. Disadvantage that can be too rigid and you can easily miss out on information if you don't ask the right questions. Semi-structured. The definition is a method of research used in social science. While structured has been a rigorous set of questions, a semi-structured interview is open, allowing new ideas to be brought up. The interviewer has a framework of the themes to be explored. Advantages are that you can adapt answers that you receive, and it allows the conversation to flow. Disadvantages are that you only get one opinion, and there's not much of a conversation. Unstructured interviews. The definition is when questions are not pre-arranged, allowing for spontaneity and for the questions to develop during the course of the interview. Advantages are the interview can go anywhere, non-closed questions, and it's more like a conversation. Disadvantages to the conversation are that it can go a bit off topic. There's also a lot to write down, which isn't that great because you could miss what they say. And we've got focus groups. Focus groups are the definition of a focus group is a diverse group of people assembled to participate in a guided discussion about a particular topic. Advantages are that you get a general idea of the population and you get a variety of opinions. Disadvantages are that some people could be really shy in the group and not say their feelings and opinions, and also might not like the group conversations. They could also follow the group, so if someone said an idea, they said their thing, and someone didn't agree with it, but they just, because they were too shy to say their opinion, they could just say, actually, yeah, I do agree with that, even though they don't. So, yeah.